Here we are again. Just let that sink in again, because that's just it. Here we are again. I've been involved with Pro-Life Action Ministries since the summer of 1981. I've been full-time since 1986. We've been doing this a long time. I see a lot of faces who've been doing it a long time with us as well. I see some new faces as well. And the reason we're here is because this is where the killing takes place. And there's something very fundamental about our need to be where this is happening, where the harm is taking place, to pray, to really beseech God, to open our hearts and our minds before the Lord, pleading for the children and their mothers and their fathers, pleading even for those who work here. And that's the first point I want to make, is that in this effort that we have, in the work that we are doing, as we seek to try and bring about true justice for the unborn, true justice in this very unjust situation, we must remain comprehensive in our Christian actions. When we believe, when we say that we believe, when we say that we know that the unborn child is a human being made in the image and likeness of God, we also have to recognize that all the born people are also made in the image and likeness of God. It works both ways, and that means all of us are made in the image and likeness of God, just as those unborn children are, but so are all of them. And we have a great call in our hearts and our lives as Christians to share the mercy and love of Jesus Christ with everyone, not just those we like, or those with whom we agree, those who do the harm. So we pray for the children who are the ones being harmed, the ones being killed. We pray for the moms who oftentimes are being deceived and the ones who are being harmed as well. We pray for the fathers. We pray for families. We pray for our own presence out here trying to intervene and do what we can to save the lives of the unborn children and to help these moms and these families. But we also pray for those who are engaging this, who promote this, who are a part of this. We pray for them to come to know Christ and to leave this evil behind. And as I like to tell people when praying for somebody who works in the abortion industry, is in your heart and your mind, imagine them joining you in church, kneeling down before the Lord next to you. That's how thoroughly we want them to come to know Christ, as well as we do, or better. That should be the desire of our hearts. That's the first thing I really want to make sure we understand. Because the second thing I want to talk about is the harder thing. On January 13th, we remembered another anniversary from 30 years ago. You see, in 1987, in January, we found the remains of 13 aborted babies in the trash dumpster behind the abortion facility in Robbinsdale. A young man who was a sidewalk counselor with the Ministry of Volunteer was working an overnight shift as a nurse, and after his shift, he just had this inkling that something was amiss with regard to the trash behind the abortion facility. So he went there after his shift, very early in the morning, and he took 2 white garbage bags out of the trash dumpster, took them home. Now this was a bitter cold January, not like we're having today. And he left them in the garage while he went to go to sleep after having his night shift. When he got up later that morning, early that afternoon, he went in, he opened up the first trash bag, and had the grisly discovery of seeing a torn apart, tiny little baby right there on top. He called our office. I went over with one of the co-founders of the ministry, Paul O'Donnell. We went over there. We confirmed what he had found, and we brought it back to our office. We then went through all of the trash to find that there were the remains of 13 babies in there. And what we saw, what we held, what we prayed over, were these tiny broken bodies, dismembered children, but clearly identifiable. The oldest of the children were somewhere between 16 and 18 weeks. Identified at that age, even confirmed by a neonatologist doctor who was on our board of directors. And the age range went all the way down to about 6 weeks, which was the smallest of the babies. And that baby, all that you could see, but you could see plainly and clearly, was a rib cage and a spinal cord about the size of a dime. We had a press conference. All the media was there. They took videos with their TV cameras. They took photos with their cameras. The reporters were there. They had the radio people were there. All the people were there, and it became the big news story that night and the next morning. And yet, none of these bodies were shown. They were covered up. Come forward to 2015, just a little more than a year ago, and we start seeing these undercover videos that are showing the remains of aborted babies that are being bought and sold from Planned Parenthoods and other places. And again, if you followed the mainstream media, they barely covered that. They didn't show what was in those videos. But this is the hard reality. With every single abortion, there is a human body left over. That means before that abortion took place, there was a tiny human being there. And the thing that we need to realize and to know, that one of the most fundamental things that we have that we need to work with is to show who the injustice is being perpetrated against, and that is the unborn baby. We need to be willing to let people understand there are human bodies there. These are human beings, very discernible to see. You know, when you can hold one in your hand, in the palm of your hand, and you can see the entire body as it's been dismembered, the realization of that human life just hits so deep and so hard. And the tragedy of what abortion is, the horror of what it is, hits you so deeply in your core. And yet that's why we are here. Because with every one of the thousands upon thousands of abortions that take place in this building every year, there's a tiny, broken baby. And that should cause us to shudder to our souls that this is what we are doing to our own brothers and sisters. The last point I wanted to make this morning, being out here, or this afternoon, I'm still in the morning for some reason, this afternoon, is that there was a big march yesterday. And a big march in D.C. and big marches all across the United States, and we're kind of dumbfounded. We see these huge numbers of people that came out to these marches, partly because we know that these marches were sponsored and paid for in part by Planned Parenthood. We know the D.C. march, they excluded pro-life women's groups from being in the march because they were pro-life. So what does it mean when we see these huge numbers of people coming out at this point in this time in our society when we're dealing with the killing of the unborn, and we're seeing gains that are being made both politically and socially on the understanding of what is life and who believes in human life and who's against abortion, and the possibility of laws being passed and Supreme Court decisions and all those things, and then suddenly we see these huge numbers of people out there. And there's a lot to reflect on this. There's a lot to figure out, a lot to know. We do need to understand that all those women who joined in those rallies were not there for abortion at all. There's a bit of co-opting going on by the abortion industry to try and mingle and merge all sorts of causes and issues together so that they can gain more strength themselves. And there's no doubt to that. That's part of it. But I think the other part of it is the sheer numbers. Look at us. I mean, this is a good crowd for us on January 22nd. And look how small our crowd is. I'm grateful for every one of you being here, but our numbers don't compare, do they? And the point is that I think we need to understand as we stand here is that regardless of what the numbers are, we have a fundamental responsibility to be here, to keep at it, to stay strong in the Lord, to continue in that mind and spirit of prayer and mercy and love, seeking justice all the way. We have so much we need to pull together and to keep in our hearts and our minds as we do this work. But we must also continue to do this work, to persevere, to not let up. Doesn't matter it's been 44 years, other than we just got to keep going until it comes to an end. And that's why we're here today. So thank you all for being here, and God bless you.